It's intermission time. It's great to get out to the movies.
I'm Megan. I host the Intermission podcast produced by The Synagogue. And today we have Nadia Latif. Nadia, can you intro yourself for the listener? Just like who you are, what you do, your film that we'll be talking about. We'll get into the film later, but just intro it.
Hi, my name's Nadia Latif. I'm a film director and theatre maker, and I've just released my debut feature film, The Man in My Basement, starring Willem Dafoe and Corey Hawkins.
So exciting. I actually was just looking at Letterboxd and there was already like a good amount of reviews from TIFF, and they're like really good reviews, which is exciting to get the ball rolling on such a positive note.
I think I mean, I love audiences. Like, I love audiences. I know some filmmaker friends of mine are maybe a little bit more like, the idea of a public audience. And I'm like, get me in. So we had an amazing time at TIFF with audiences there. I've just been in New York for a week doing preview screenings. And like, I snuck into every single screening to sit and watch a bit of it with the audience, because I think, I come from the theatre. And so I love audiences. Everything I do is about recognizing that audience and having a relationship with them. So like Letterboxd to me is just like another way into that. And
interesting.
A positive response is great, but I also love a kind of like complete slice and dice, like where you're like, "Woo, you hated it,
yeah,
but at least you engaged." Like, I think that's kind of cool. If you want to,
I agree with that. Like, if we ever get like really, I don't know, like crazy comments on the podcast, I'm like, whatever, at least they're like feeling really strongly, and that's good.
I once did a show in the theatre and I came out, it was a pretty provocative piece of work, and I came out and this elderly white couple was stood at the box office asking for their ticket money back, and the box office manager, who I knew very well, who was a wonderful man, turned to them and he just said, "Ma'am, you cannot return a sandwich once you have eaten it." And I always think about that. I'm always just like, yeah, man, it's all right. Like, I think that also maybe with like the advent of streaming, there's like an idea that like any form of negative response or boredom is like a death knell, and I'm just sort of like it's fine. You just need to embrace it all. Do you know what I mean? I actually think boredom is quite interesting, but I don't want to make things that are boring. But I definitely think there are like forms of films where you're like, wow, I'm being asked to push through some very like unusual feelings here. So honestly, my favorite thing was watching it in New York because they're just so much more vocal than UK audiences. And I love that. I love it. Anything tense with an American audience is the absolute best. Like, just elite live experience.
That's so funny. I agree. I mean, obviously, like I live in LA, and I've kind of been in California my whole life. And so like, that's all I know is that really that theater experience, but everyone like laughing and gasping and feeding off of each other. I'm like, this is so funny and fun, and I'm all about it.
Yeah, I kind of feel that how do you feel living in LA? I feel like the times I've been to LA, which is not a huge number, it must be said, and I go to the movies a lot. I go to the movies once or twice a week, like physically to a cinema.
Fun, good.
And I feel like the times that I've been to the cinema in LA, I feel like it's not very well attended. I feel like, a lot of people
really?
do not go to the movies a huge amount, in the same way that I'm just like every week I'll go see something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could be a rerun, it could be anything, because I just like to go and sit in a dark room with strangers. It's my favorite thing.
I mean, I feel the exact same way. Like, there is nothing better than going to the movies by yourself and just being around strangers. Like, that is the best.
Can I just say, the best way to watch a film, in my esteemed opinion, is in the morning. I like a nice Saturday morning at like 10 or 11 a.m. You take in a coffee, you take in a fancy pastry, you sit in the back row center, and it's already a minimum 3-star experience. You're like, this film can't suck, because already this is like, and sometimes it's you and one other guy sat over there, and I'm just like, all films should be watched like this. Maybe not necessarily on your own, because then the box office would be like nil. But I just think it's like, it feels like the whole world is made for you in that moment. I love it.
I completely agree. And I have said that, like, a similar anecdote before. Like, to me, there nothing could go wrong in that moment. Like, you're already in a good mood. You're like romanticizing your life. You're having like a cheeky
100%.
morning.
You're like there with your like music in, walking there, being like, oh my God, I'm in a music video of my own existence. Like, amazing.
I couldn't relate more.
The thing is, I can't watch a late night film anymore. I'm too old. And so, like, while I was in people were like, you want to go Midnight Madness? I was like, there is no way I'm staying awake. Like, as much as I would love to, there is no way I'm staying awake through a film that starts at midnight. Like, it's just not happening for me anymore. I'm really sorry. That's a young woman's game.
There are some times where, like, the other night I came home. I think I came home from recording a podcast. We were recording in person, and I often after we record the podcast, I'm like, I want to watch a movie right now. And so I hadn't seen it before, and I'd been wanting to watch the movie Victoria. And
oh yeah, great film. That's a great film.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like set up a whole vibe in my living room. I was sitting just like right there, and I like made the lights red, and I had candles. And so I was like, okay, like this is a nighttime movie watch for me. But if I'm like going to the theater, I've definitely been doing a lot more matinees.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I feel like Victoria is a hell of a film to watch late at night, because you definitely get very stressed. Like, I would be like, I now need to watch like a lovely, soothing nature documentary in order to go to bed.
Yeah. I get that. Also, wait, to your point about LA theaters being kind of empty, that is funny because I haven't experienced that, but also I feel like I've been going to a lot of movies that it's like opening weekend recently. And so everyone's really excited. But if you're talking about just kind of the like films that are like being replayed, maybe it's somewhere like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example of a theater, but just like a replay of a movie that's been out. I could see that happening. I don't know. But also I've only been in LA for 2 years. So my perception of LA like is still limited.
I remember going to a screening once of a Touch of Evil at LACMA in the screening room they have there. Again, it was a matinee, and it was just me and like 50 octogenarians. Like, I was the only person in there who didn't walk with like a Zimmer frame. And people always complain that young audiences are badly behaved. They're like, young people today, they never get off their phones. They never stop talking in the cinema. You want to know who's really bloody badly behaved? Senior citizens, like just like leaning over to each other in the middle of something and being like, what did he say? And you're just like, shush, it's Touch of Evil. Like, this is so good. But I remember it very, very fondly. It's a very beautiful screening room as well.
Something I also wanted to ask you, it's a question that we ask everyone that comes on the show. Makes you be a little bit like introspective or outrospective. But if you were to pick a film that describes your life right now, what comes to mind?
Hellraiser? No. It's Hellraiser, but I'm the Cenobite. No, I'm kidding. A film that... do you know what, actually? And it's a genre that I love. But I love a kind of like second coming of age story. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of like, I should already be an adult, but I'm not, and I'm gonna figure it out. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I could like pick a single film that would necessarily like sum that up, but like I love all Nicole Holofcener's films for that reason. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, it's about people who like should be fully grown and should know everything, but it's like, there's still something naive about them, basically, or still something they're like trying to figure out. And I sort of feel like at the moment, it's a really weird thing for me at the moment, because like in some ways I feel incredibly long in the tooth, because I've been a director for nearly 20 years. Do you know what I mean? 20 years? Yeah, maybe nearly 20 years. But I'm making my feature debut now. And so it feels like there's this weird, and I'm sort of just allowing myself to feel it, that thing of just like, I'm supposed to know everything, but in some ways I'm supposed to know nothing. And actually, my friend Charlie Wells, who made the brilliant film After Sun, said something to me before filming. And it's one of the two truly great pieces of advice I got before filming. And Charlie said to me, just remember, you have to make it naively. It's the only time in your life you're going to get to make a film naively. After that, you're going to know too much. Do you know what I mean? You're going to be like, how does this sit? But actually just embrace not knowing. It's okay. It's good. It's actually the best way to be. And I couldn't agree with her more. Like, I think I thought about it nearly every day, about like not worrying too much about the kind of consequence of it. The other truly great piece of advice I got, which actually was incredibly useful, was my friend Claire Oakley, who's also a brilliant film director. And she said to me, lay out the next day's clothes before you go to bed at night, every day while you're shooting. Because she's like, decision fatigue is real. And if you've just laid out your clothes, like including like underwear, socks, sweater, she's like, you will wake up and you've done yourself a favor. And I did it every day. There you go. So yeah, I feel like I'm in that kind of second coming of age at the moment, but I'm enjoying it. I mean, maybe I'm sort of in the rom-com of my life with myself. Like it's all brilliant and stupid and insane and glorious.
I absolutely loved that answer, and also like how incredible to have friends in the industry to give you little nuggets of advice like that. That's really special.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually have found other directors in the industry incredibly generous with their kind of time and advice. And I because my film got delayed by the strikes. I just invited loads of friends who were directors to come over, and I'd kind of seduce them in with like a fancy dinner. I'd be like, look, I've made this nice food for you. Give me advice, please. And so I think partly it was sort of just being in community with each other. But I think directors are. I think that actually it's like, anytime you cast an actor and you go on this, or you're thinking about casting an actor and you go on their CV and you go, they've worked with so-and-so a couple of times. You can call that person up and just be like, yo, what's so-and-so? And honestly, every director in the world will pick up the phone to you in that moment because they get that we're all kind of connected. So yeah, I've generally find directors are very warm and loving people. We're not like weird plants that you grow in cupboards. Sometimes we're like weird you grow in cupboards.
I wanted to ask also just about your film taste in regards to what you watch now and what you watched growing up, and is there a through line there, or do you think that your film taste has evolved drastically looking back?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I'm from Sudan, and when I was growing up, there were no cinemas, there were no theaters, there was no kind of local television, so everything that we watched was kind of imported by my parents. They like record stuff from the TV in the UK, like on VHS, which slightly gives away my age. And then we would just watch it. And there was very little. I think my parents were like, kids that films that kids watch don't need to be kids films. Do you know what I mean? So we watched like westerns. We watched a lot of Indian cinema, a lot of Bollywood cinema, a lot of Chinese cinema, like kind of kung fu, but also wuxia films. Do you know what I mean? Like just kind of a lot of films that I think my parents also felt like if something was about like a real subject or something, that therefore it was it didn't matter if it was like kind of too adult. Do you know what I mean? They were like, oh, but this is like real life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember watching like Monsoon Wedding, which is just one of my favorite films ever, the Mira Nair film with my mother. But I also remember watching, like early Ang Lee films as well. Like we had quite a kind of worldly view. I think Indian cinema in particular is very kind of like East African coded as well. Do you know what I mean? We're like, very similar cultures. Do you know what I mean? Like we kind of like we get it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that it wasn't until I moved to the UK, I moved as a teenager. We used to spend summers here and I would like go to the theatre all summer and then we'd go back. But I think when I moved here full time for my education was really the first time that I realised how it wasn't so much how much like white dominated cinema was, because I sort of knew that, but what I truly understood was how little non-white cinema white people watch. You know what I mean? Like I can be talking and be like, blah, 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 this thing, and just like, I do not know what's an Usman Sembène, and be like, what do you mean what's an Usman Sembène? Like that's like saying like what's a Martin Scorsese? Do you know what I mean? Like I was like, he's one of the most important directors in the world, and so I think that it gave me more of an appetite for only watching cinema by people from the. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a prestigious white film; they're the best. But I think I began to like look for that difference a little bit more and just be like, prestige white shit is amazing. It's obviously amazing. Like, you know, same in the theatre. Like, what, you're going to throw Shakespeare and Chekhov and Ibsen out the window? No. But I think it's like those films that like haven't been given air and haven't been given the releases that they should. I think I began to seek those out more. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think my husband is I'm not even sure he would call himself a cinema buff. I think he called himself a cineast, which is truly pretentious. But he's very good at that. He's very good at like seeking out like incredibly rare screenings of like, you know, the one print that exists of Sambazanga or, you know, stuff like that. And so actually I feel like weirdly he and I together have really gone, let's find films. I'm also, it must have said, the older I get, absolutely passionate about the restoration of those films. It really scares me, this idea that films will sort of just like cease to exist if they don't become part of a kind of, you know, digital restoration and sort of hopefully. But yeah, I think I also I just like any genre. Like I like anything that's like got a set of rules, got a set of audience expectations. You know, but yeah, I think probably the person I can like fall back on watching the most is there's a French Mauritanian Algerian director called Med Hondo. I think he made 7 films in total. And I can just watch them. I could watch one every day for a week, and then I'd start again the next week, and I'd watch each of them again because I just think they're so unusual and just so like it makes me like go like film can be anything. It could just be anything. Like one day you could make a musical about slavery, and the next day you could make a kind of, you know, historic epic about a female, you know, warrior queen in Central Africa. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm just like, although I do think sometimes I think about the fact that if people ask me who my like favorite mainstream director was, I think I would probably say Ang Lee, just for the like, how does the same person make all those films? Do you know what I mean? Like I'm just sort of like, how are you out here making like Sense and Sensibility and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and The Wedding Banquet? Do you know what I mean? It's just like, and there is obviously such a theme that runs through his work about repression, about being like, repressed. You know, you can see, but I just go like, God, what a mad career! Like how extraordinary. And also I think the older I get, the more I have like a little like comfort list of films, like the comfort rewatch film, and like don't tell the cool kids, but like love a rewatch of a Merchant Ivory film. I'm like, oh, so sumptuous. Like it feels
valid.
Like, it feels like eating good food. Do you know what I mean? You're just sort of like, oh, so lovely. Oh God, like, you know, why do we ever bother to make anything else?
When you're working on a project and you have actors or the crew or whatever, do you ever kind of give them an assignment or to watch a certain film or reference a certain film? And did you do that for this project we'll be talking about?
Yes, hugely. And it's always been a thing in my theatre practice, and it's definitely a thing in my film practice, and even on my short films. I think on Man in My Basement, there was a watch list like maybe 25 or 30 films deep. I will say that I think that those things are never like this, our film is going to be like X. It's not that. It's like, in order for you to understand me and my point of view and all of the things that I have been in conversation with intellectually or emotionally, here is 30 films. So like if I were to listen to you, you'd be like, oh, what the hell's that got to do with Man in My Basement? And I'd be like, not a lot. But, you know, I was thinking about, you know, strong women, and I was reminded of this thing, and then I rewatched it like 9 times. And so, yeah, there was a very long watch list just for a kind of spiritual understanding of where I was coming from in order to make the film. But I think actually when we shot it, we moved. I think that there's a point at which you have to kind of like go, okay, I don't need any more references because I'm doing my own thing. So actually when we got into prep on the film, it was, we sort of religiously didn't reference other films and instead would reference kind of painting and photography and to I think sometimes if you get too caught into referencing other films, you just end up making a kind of assemblage of other people's ideas rather than actually being like, how do I get there? So we were mainly using the paintings of Lynette Yadamboisier, the photography of Carrie Mae Weems, and the portraiture of Alice Neal, just as a kind of like, sort of, you know, there's stuff about like the color palette, and again, you know, that really helped us. But yeah, so there was and there was quite a lot of music again that was just like this is, you know, a bit like Michael Phelps, just sat there kind of like getting in the zone. But yeah, I think me and Willem in particular, we watched a lot of films, mainly documentaries, I would say, that were about people from very extreme, violent political situations. So we watched like films about ex-Nazis and people who've been involved with the Khmer Rouge, but also like, you know, films about people who've been on very long submarine missions. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it was all sort of trying to understand POV. And I don't mean literal camera POV. I mean like intellectual POV, rather than I want to make a film that kind of references these other things. Having said that, there is a shot in the film that is a reference to Charles Burnett's Killer of Sheep.
That is interesting, because I am always curious when people come on if they have specific shots like that are nods to other films, and why and how they choose that.
I think I did it because I certainly know that I feel stronger knowing that I have filmmaker ancestors. In so much as I mean, like, I feel stronger knowing that people like Usman Sembène and Charles Burnett and Melvin Van Peebles and Judi Dash and all these people made films before me, because I think we're still trapped in the idea of, you know, when you're from an underrepresented background in any industry, but we're talking about filmmaking, you can feel a lot like you're doing things for the first time. And I think that when you go back and you look at these people who are black or brown, who are making extraordinary films in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, it makes you feel stronger. It makes you feel like, yeah, I've got this. He was making fucking banging films for like, with way less resources, you know, way back when. And I think I'm particularly drawn to the kind of like hook or crook filmmaking of the 70s, Jeremy, where you're just like, damn, they just went and did this. Like, good for them. And so in a way, I wanted to put a reference to Charles and Killer Sheep into the film, because I felt like a lot of the film is about acknowledging your ancestry and acknowledging your ancestors. And I felt like in making this kind of African-American film, I just wanted to put in like a little like Easter egg to, you know, to be like, you know, almost like kind of going, Charles was here. So yeah, it was a sentimental move. It also makes sense. Like, if you don't know that it's from Killer of Sheep,
yeah,
it makes sense as a shot. But like real ones know it's from Killer of Sheep.
You kind of mentioned this a little bit ago about color palette with film. And I was wondering, as a film viewer, when you're watching movies, do you pay attention mostly to the visual color palette, the sound design, the score music, the editing rhythms? Like, is there a thing you feel like you're focusing on in that moment? Because I don't work in films. I'm just a lover of film. And so as I've interviewed more and more people, I always think their viewing experience is so different than mine, because they have that like technical background, and they also have the perspective of creating the film. And I'm just viewing it with like baby eyes, you know, childlike vision.
I think it's really difficult to extract any of those elements from each other. I think it's less like which one leads you in, but which one pushes you out first.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Because I think when they're all working in symphony, you don't notice, right? It's like listening to an orchestra. You're going, everything is the right size cog in the machine. Like everything, oh, beautiful. When that happens, it's amazing. It's the best thing ever. I think I personally probably have an allergy to things being not overscored. My film is very score forward, but I think when I feel the score doing the emotional heavy lifting, I get a bit like, and like, I kind of want to be with the image, you know what I mean? So even though I have quite a lot of score in my own film, I love a very stark film that has barely any score for that reason. Or I like a score that's like working almost at cross purposes with the image in some way. I think it's just that thing where it's just like, oh, it's getting sentimental. Here comes a swell of violins. Whoop, and you're like, really? Didn't you just trust me with the image and like the acting, and that I was going to feel the things that I want to feel. So I think it's, and I mean, definitely if something is like ugly as hell, do you know what I mean? Like, but a lot of that I think is, well, I think what we're talking about is taste. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that there are good or bad. Do you know what I mean? I just think that's not my taste. There's some absolutely amazing, very swelly scores, but it's just that I have a little allergy to them. And I think the grade thing is an interesting question though, because I certainly feel like there are like styles of grade that emerge. Do you know what I mean? Like where you're just like, okay, we're doing the pink and blue. All right, cool.
Yeah.
And so it's more like you sort of go like, this feels like a grade I've seen before, rather than something that feels specific to the film, like something like it came out of like the lights and the shadows that naturally emerged while you were filming. So I think that, similarly, like I don't love a like, that sounded like I was doing an impression of John Williams. Obviously John Williams writes amazing scores, but who doesn't love, Jurassic Park's score? It's the best thing ever. But yeah, I think when you sort of feel like, oh, this is sort of a grade because it's like a style, it's like a thing that we're doing, I'm a bit like, find it for yourself, man. Like, but yeah, no, there's but hopefully they're all working together, you hope. I will say that my thing that I've realized having now made a film is how often the score is just tacked on. Like very often, I didn't realize this, but the composer is sort of brought on relatively close to the end of making a film. Like it might be brought in the edit, or even when the edit is completed. I think that is insane. I think that is the best thing I have ever heard. My composer, Robert Aiki Aubreylo, has probably been working on this film like longer than any other HAD. And we talked through it well before we went into prep. Do you know what I mean? Like we were like sending each other music samples, being like, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that. And he came on set. He works in modular synth, so he would record various field recordings of like the actors walking up and down stairs, and
Oh wow.
Moving their hands over different materials, or like when we went and shot in Sag Harbor, he was recording like the trees and the roads and and all sorts of things. I've got a very odd photograph of him recording some sand, just like and then he turns that into music, right? So all of the music in our film is actually a kind of musicalization of real sounds.
Wow.
So he worked throughout the edit, throughout all of the and it's just like, I can't imagine working with music in any other way. I'm like, it's just such a big storytelling device. How can, I don't want it to be a response. I want it to be part of the process of how it's like, how is this music working with or against it?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my only thing where I was like, wait, what? You normally get brought on at the end. What would I have done without you? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Wow. That is so cool about the sound making process. I'm so intrigued by that. Did you search for someone who was skilled in that field? What did you say it was called again?
I'm also desperately trying to find a photograph to show you of Robert recording.
Yeah, I want to see.
It was like just one of the funniest things I've ever seen, and he looked like quite mad. Here we go. Here he is recording a tree.
That's so funny.
And here he is.
I must meet him. This is awesome.
He's great. Yeah, I mean, Robert's a very, very experienced composer, and I, had seen dozens of films that he'd worked on. But I had also seen him. He's a musician in his own right, and I'd seen him perform live. And I just thought that there was something so interesting about the music that he makes, and also the process, and also that it has such a weird process. But also, I was really interested in the fact that he is obviously there for the entire orchestra of the film. Like all of it was going to be in one person. Like he performed the entire score.
Wow.
So yeah, I just felt like it felt like a really pleasingly tactile process.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's cool. He's really cool.
My final question for this general movie taste section, I think I'll leave it with, what do you think is missing from the slate of movies that are being made right now, and what types of films do you wish to see more of or create more of? See and create is two very different things. Because I don't want to make it, but I do want to see it. Like that's super cool.
I feel like, I mean, this is a very, I'm sure you've heard this loads, but it's just like less remakes, less reboots, less reimaginings, unless there's like a very different POV. Do you know what I mean? Like where you're just like, well, damn, I'm going to reimagine that. And I don't just mean like, let's do it, but instead of boys, it's girls. I mean, like really properly radical rethinking of source material or whatever. I just think more original films, but also I think more films that are kind of intended for cinemas, because I mean that only so much as sometimes I feel when I see films that are made for streaming, as in made to go directly onto streaming, it feels like the kind of visual language gets smaller, and I think that's a real shame. Do you know what I mean? Like, to be like, I think one of the most amazing things about going to the cinema is just that like thing of like, oh my god, wow, like look at all of this. This is incredible. But I also think that more films that are for more audiences. I don't mean a broader audience, but I feel like that thing of like more specific audiences, because I actually think the more specific something is, the better it becomes. Do you know what I mean? Where I'm just like, and I love those films. Do you know what I mean? Like where you go and you just go like, wow, I'm not sure I got like all of the references because like it's so culturally specific. Like weirdly, I went through a period of watching like quite a lot of Mongolian cinema during the pandemic because I saw one Mongolian film which was just wonderful. It was just so interesting. And then I watched like 7 or 8 more Mongolian films. And I felt like, sure, if I was Mongolian, there were probably references like this that might be like slightly funnier or slightly sadder because you get the cultural specificity. But like, I'm in, sign me up. Like I learned all about how they make yak cheese. You know what I mean? Like it's like, there's nice horses that they ride around on, but also like, the threat that oil drilling forms in Mongolia at the moment, etc. So yeah, I love that. I love that when you're just like, something is so incredibly culturally specific that it becomes almost like the act of traveling around the world. Do you know what I mean? Like where you sort of feel like, oh, I like dipped a little toe in all of these cultures. So yeah, just more good films. Is that an option? Can we just have more good films? There's lots of good films.
Love that.
We have more of them.
I am just now thinking I need you to like curate a list of films I need to see. I just feel like your breadth of what you've watched is so wide, and I just need you to tell me what to watch now.
I think do you know what? I think it feels wider than it is sometimes because there's loads of films in the middle that I've never seen. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I've seen all the films of Bergman or Tarkovsky. I was too busy doing other things. But in a way, I'm like, I can always come back to those. They're always going to be there. Don't worry, they're not going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I've got like loads of other stuff to do, and things that are more interesting to me. And I think it's actually less to me. Like I've watched obviously a lot of African cinema and a lot of African American cinema, but it's actually not for me about necessarily. I like the kind of traveling element of films. Do you know what I mean? Where you just sort of go, wow, I'm going to meet these weird and wonderful people over here. I just think that's one of the best things about watching films. So yeah, I'll create you a list anytime.
Okay, so we're going to now discuss The Man in My Basement. I have a little synopsis. Down on his luck, Charles Blakey agrees to rent his basement to a mysterious stranger, unaware he may be letting in a force much darker than he imagined. And it stars Willem Dafoe, Jonathan Ajayi, Corey Hawkins, and Anna Diop. To get started, this film is based on the acclaimed novel by Walter Mosley. Were you already familiar with that story prior to working on this project?
So I read the novel when it was published in 2004. So in 2004, I was not aware of Walter Mosley yet, but because this was the first Walter Mosley book that I'd read. And obviously he's most famous for being a detective novelist. And so that led me to read some of his other books. But so yes, I was incredibly aware of this book, which is why I chased it down and murdered everyone else who tried to turn it into a film. I'm of course joking.
Oh, that's so fun though, because I feel like I've talked to people through the podcast where a story kind of gets delivered to them or plopped on their lap. And that's so fun that you were already a fan of this work and then wanted to make something with it. That's a really cool experience.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think it was also more like I'm not even necessarily madly for a kind of adaptation of an existing story. But I just felt like I'd read this book 20 years ago and I remembered it so clearly. And I remembered so many of the images from the book so clearly. And they were visual images. It's a very like cerebral story in a lot of ways. But the thing that I remembered was images, not arguments. And I was like, I can turn this into a film because those images are going to be how I'm going to lens the whole thing. It's just like making those really key. So yeah, when I heard that there was a film company who had the rights to it, I was like, let me in. I've come to make your film. I mean, I didn't even have a finished short film at that time. You know, I was just starting out. But I think they just responded to the fact that she was like, she so clearly loves this story. Like, that's what I think a really great adaptation needs. Just you going, I absolutely love this. You don't understand. Like, 20 years it's been in my head.
Did they have any involvement in the film, or were there any restrictions to how you could mess with the story? No?
No, not at all. I think Walter would always say, you know, my book is on the shelf. You know, you're making the movie. I'll be like, yes. And I think that the book and the film, I refer to them as being cousins, not twins. I think if you read the book, you'll be like, yeah, it's kind of got the same story, but there are lots of quite key differences in like character and outlook and also tone. I think the film is a lot kind of darker and more baroque, mainly because we're in a different place in 2025 than necessarily in 2004. But also, I'm me and I can only make the film that I'm going to make. You know what I mean?
Kind of what you're saying right now about the influences of the time that we're in. Were there people, historical events, moments that you specifically had in mind while making this project?
Yeah. So the original book story is set in 2004. It's kind of set when the book is published. And I very much wanted to shift it back to 1994, partly because I remember 1994 and I was very in this like slightly where I think I was interested in a bunch of things. One, I was interested in information still being in books predominantly. Like it's like cusp internet. Internet's about to go massive. It exists, but it's still not like brilliant. It's all a bit like Ask Jeeves. But so I was sort of interested in that in this kind of moment just before the explosion of information into the world. And I was also interested in kind of contrasting everything that was happening in African American culture at that time with everything that was happening in African geopolitics, and more specifically the Rwandan genocide. Because I think that there are so many conversations in the film about like history and what it means to connect to your history as an African American and what your kind of African ancestry may have been. And I felt like maybe because of like a certain cynicism that I have about that idea, I was like, what I want to contrast this with is a kind of reckoning with a moment of colonial stain, right? Like it's like the Rwandan genocide is directly linked to the colonization of that region of Africa by the Belgians. And so I was sort of interested in this idea that like, history can be like a romantic idea. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if my ancestors were kings and queens from Mali or Gabon, but that actually you have like a total denial of the modern political moment in Africa. So yeah, I felt like I was sort of trying to re-lens it slightly in that way. I slightly forgotten your question. I was like, where did this start from?
Well, just real life influences and where you were pulling from.
Yeah. I think that was the main one was just thinking about that. And I think I'm very interested in the moment about the whole phenomena of African countries asking for their artifacts back. The whole notion you should repatriate those. Mati Diop's extraordinary film Dahomey, which is all about the returning of several of these bronzes back to Senegal. I just thought it was brilliant. But I think that whole my sister worked in the British Museum for a time, and I think that whole idea of like, well, we keep them here because they're safer. It's safer for them, and they'll be better kept. sure, that's got some argument, I'm sure. Like, but I don't think it's the whole argument. Do you know what I mean? And I definitely think that's not a argument for all of those things, because why you got all those Greek marbles? You could definitely return those to Greece. So I think the whole thing of like, oh, we get to keep it because we stole it from you is like a really like gross thing that we all just take for granted when we walk around museums. But then equally, it's like, shouldn't I be able to walk around a museum and see, you know, these things and be part of a kind of global history? Like, I think it's a properly like thorny question, but I think it's one that we need to look at instead of looking away from.
Just the cast is a really awesome cast. Did you have any part in that? I'm always so curious if directors get a say into who's in their project.
100%. Like, those are the actors I wanted. Those are the actors. Like, I know that that's probably not the case on like maybe very big budget films or whatever. But I think that you know, I'm maybe it's coming from a theatre background, but I've worked with like hundreds and hundreds of actors in my life because I've done, you know, so many projects. And I think that I have a real like, I don't know if it's that I've got a skill for casting, but I love casting. Like, I'm like, this is the best bit. Let's see everyone. Let's get them in. Let's really work on them. It was slightly unusual for me in this because Willem was attached to the project very, very early on. I'd sort of written it for him, sort of like as a joke in my head. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, you know, because I think it's really helpful to write thinking about a specific person because you sort of think about them as a 3D figure within the scenes. And I was like, Willem Dafoe walks in the room. And then my producers were like, let's just send it to Willem Dafoe and see if he says yes. And he did. You know, Corey I met through a slightly more conventional casting process. But like the second he walked in the room, I was just like, it was like everything else went into soft focus. Like, I was just like, it's you. You're here. You've come to be Charles. Because he was just something. There's just something, and it's not like he's like the character at all. It's actually that he like is an actor who is so technically. He's not only naturally gifted, but he's also very technically minded. And so that whole thing of just like, I understand how to perform him, and I understand how to put these ideas out there. I think there's a lot that's kind of overstated about like, you know, whether or not somebody's like drawing from their own well. And I think that sometimes it's like, I don't have to live this man's life. I'm drawing from a like deeper emotional well, which is like, I understand what it's like to feel stuck, or I understand what it's like to, you know, lose a parent, or whatever it is. It's like, that's all I need to like get in. I always remember reading a director talking about casting and you know, and he'd seen hundreds of people who were really like the character, and in the end he was like, sometimes you just need an actor. And I was like, yeah, man, because they're like really good at pretending and stuff. So once we had Willem and Corey, and a lot of the other cast are British, and a lot of them were actors that I'd wanted to work with for like absolutely years. Like Jonathan Ajayi, I think I met him when he did his first theatre show. He hadn't even graduated from drama school. And I came up to him after and said, let's have a cup of tea. And we did. And I said to him, me and you were going to work together one day. It just took us 10 years to figure it out. But
I love that.
Oh, yeah. On the first day on set, we just like had a little cry on each other because we were like, who would have thought? Here we are.
That's so cool. So in regards to your voice as a director and your style, how do you balance with a film in this genre, the audience expectations of what they would assume you would do, the genre conventions, also like commercial concerns of getting people in the seats? Like, how do you balance all these different aspects to directing a film?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm somebody who loves genre. I love all genre. I love sci-fi. I love thrillers. I love horrors. Do you know what I mean? But I also like a rom-com and a Western. But, and every set of genre has its set of audience expectations, of course. But in a way, I think that, if anything, particularly with things that exist in the kind of thriller, horror lane, I think if you rely too much on trope, a very experienced audience will see you coming. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're sort of like, I know what this thing is. And so actually, I think when I made this film, I didn't think of anything as like, oh, this is a beat of this genre or this is a beat of that genre, because I actually think that one of the things I really enjoy about my film when I watch it is the fact that you could get this like very intense kind of thriller scene, and then the next scene is quite comedic. Like I love that about it. I know, you know, some people might be like, oh, this feels like creative whiplash, but I'm like, I think that's like the best thing. I think we should sort of make films worrying less about what they are. And also I think like when you shoot a film, you just shoot it scene to scene. Do you know what I mean? And then when you put it together in the edit, it tells you what it wants to be. Like it tells you how the images come together. You're like, I thought that this bit was, you know, more kind of loose than it actually has turned out. Do you know what I mean? And actually it's feeling quite highly strung, and that's kind of interesting. You know, how does that change the two scenes around it? Commercial concerns, I don't think anyone can make anything thinking about commercial concerns. You're just like, it's literally not my job to think about these things. It's my job to make the best piece of art that I can make. And I think also I was like, I think people just want to watch things that are good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, I always think that it was something that I began to think about in my theatre work, about like the notion of something being virtuosic. Do you know what I mean? Like that whole thing about like, damn, I've seen something in this film or this play or whatever that like I have never seen before, or like, God, that must be so incredibly difficult. How did he do that? I don't mean in terms of like movie magic. I think just in terms of just like, woof, how did they manage that? Like, what was the process of that like? And so I think I'm always interested in when I'm making anything, of sort of going like, what is the moment where people go like, holy shit, okay, wow, that is something I've not seen before, or that's something where I'm truly wondering how they pulled it off. But I don't think that's something where I'm like, as I'm making it, I'm thinking, this is my virtuosic moment. Do you know what I mean? But I think when you're sort of putting it together, a really brilliant writer once told me, he was like, every truly great script has an image that burns its way into your memory for the rest of time. It could be Hamlet holding a skull. It could be, you know, it doesn't, like, since the dawn of literature, you know, it's the Oedipus, mum gouging out her own eyes. Like this thing where you just go, oh my God, I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. And again, I don't think you can write that consciously, but I do think you can strive for images that somehow sum up the argument of the thing that you're trying to make. The reason that, you know, Hamlet holding a skull, to be or not to be, works is that it also sums up what the whole thing is about, which is man reckons with death. You know what I mean? Like, visual indicator of man reckoning with death. So I think I did think a little bit about how various images in the film work towards a theme, like how visually you could help people towards a better understanding of the themes of the film.
I think I just want to close this section out of your film of what do you hope the viewer leaves your film with, whether it's a lesson or a motif, or what do you hope the audience takes away from this viewing experience?
I really hope that audiences leave with questions. Do you know what I mean? And I think that we always wanted it to feel, me and Robert, actually, my composer, talked a lot about wanting the film to feel like it ends on an inhale. Like you're like, well, what's he going to do next? So it does literally, the last note in the score is actually the actor inhaling turned into a piece of music. Wow,
I love that.
Yeah, it's just this idea that it's like life goes on, like something is going to happen. But I also feel like, so yeah, just a sense of questioning, and I think a sense of like going back into the world and questioning things that you see around you. You know, maybe next time when you go to a museum, it could be in months, it could be in years, you'll just get this little memory of this film that told you, I wonder how those artifacts got there. You know what I mean? Just like that, it sort of like influences the way you see the world, like a tiny, tiny bit, just like 1%, you know what I mean? So yeah, I hope it sort of like gives people a slightly different, maybe a slightly broader worldview. Like the next time that you see, you know, a news report about a conflict happening in a faraway land where people don't look like you, that you might go, I'm not going to change the channel actually, because I've been told that I just watched this movie, and they were like, turning off the channel when there's a conflict happening on TV is bad. We should look at these things. So yeah, just a small ask of everybody changing their complete worldview after watching this film.
Okay, now we'll just do this last section, a quick rapid fire game. I will say,
ready. Let's go.
No right or wrong answer. Yeah, let's just get into it. If you had to explain love with a single film, which would you choose?
What? Do you know what? I would choose Remains of the Day, because it teaches you about how much love is yearning is part of love. Like, not getting love is like the most devastating thing.
If you had to explain fear with one film, what would you pick?
I would choose The Strangers, the original film, because the bit where Liv Tyler asks the bad guys, she says, why are you doing this? And the single line, because you were at home, is the scariest line in cinema.
If someone had never seen a movie before and you could only show them one film to explain what cinema is, what would it be?
Do you know what? Because I rewatched it recently and it's just magnificent, I would go with Farewell, My Concubine. Because you just go like, cinema can just be like epic and also like so personal at the same time. And it's just like a bad boy film.
Which film do you think best represents our current cultural moment?
Oh, yeah. I sort of feel maybe one of those like 70s political thrillers, like really like Chinatown, or one of those where you're just sort of like, actually all of life is the kind of rich and powerful behind the scenes who are actually running things and don't give a shit about people. Do you know what I mean? Like the whole thing of just like, they're all secretly running the water companies or whatever. So yeah, just don't trust, white men in suits.
If you could describe power with just one film, what comes to mind?
I feel like maybe 2001: Space Odyssey. Because it's sort of just like, it feels like being punched in the face in like the best way possible, but also that whole like shifting sense of who has power in it as well. Weird choice, but I'm going to stick with it.
I like it. There is no wrong answer. I'll do just two more. Sure. Which film best illustrates the idea of home?
I'm going to go with Monsoon Wedding, Miranaya, because it's all about a large expat family coming home for a wedding, but also that sense of like, home is just a place where your like family are together. Oh God, I love that film.
Okay, and I'll end it with which film most perfectly balances darkness and hope?
Do you know what? I'm going to go with, there's a Lesothan film called This Is Not a Burial, It's a Resurrection. And it's about a community in Lesotho being moved on from their ancestral home, and one woman wanting to dig up her husband's body because she believes that, that he should go with her. But it's like so dark and so funny, but also visually, the dark and light in it, chef's kiss. Incredible.
Well, I had truly the best time talking to you, Nadia. I am like just blown away. I don't know. I could listen to you talk all day. If I'm being honest, you have such a plethora of knowledge and such a clear love of film and theater. I just had a really great time. So I just wanted to thank you.
So much fun.
Good. And for the listener, where and how and when can they see The Man in My Basement?
So The Man in My Basement is in cinemas across America and the UK from September 12th, which is yesterday for me. And then it's streaming on Hulu in America and Disney Plus in the rest of the world from September 26th.
Incredible. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. And now we'll close out.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Good evening.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. To stay in touch, follow our Instagram page at It's Intermission Time and share with your friends.
As always, Intermission is produced by Jazeel Chu and Olivia Dean, and of course, hosted by yours truly, Megan Braun. This episode is brought to you by The Synagogue.